Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us today. I have two of our three panel guests in the studio with me at the moment. We're still waiting for Paul Lee to join us. So we've had one or two technical issues, I'm afraid. But let me just first of all just allow you to see my guests in the studio. So I'm adding Lizzie and Neil to my screen. They're going to be making short presentations about what they do before we go into discuss some of the most recent developments in lifestyle medicine and technologies that are associated with that. So I'll start by I'll ask Neil. I'm going to make him main screen. I'm going to ask Neil just to say a few words about himself whilst I load the presentations up.
Okay, thanks, David. Yeah, so Neil King, my background for the last 35 years has been largely working in the UK and European fitness industries. I basically started off with a sports science background, did every job known to man in leisure, including being a cleaner. Pretty good one I was as well. And ended up being managing director and chief exec of a couple of the larger fitness businesses in the UK. I left all that about 2.5 years ago because I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to do something in the longevity space. And our premise was definitely that normal aging wasn't normal, and there were numerous things that we could all do to age in a different way. And age in a way which gave us the tools to live a long, strong, active and healthy life. And on that basis, we opened the Longevity Studio in Milton Keynes about 2.5 years ago. We've been testing and learning lots of different science and tech that can help us build a proposition which we hope to scale in the future. Yeah, and that's where we are right now. Are you jumping back in, David, or am I doing the pres? I have no idea.
Okay, if you want to tell me when you want to go to the next slide, I'll advance slides for you.
Oh, right, okay. Sorry. Right, okay, let's go. Are we moving the slideshow?
You want next slide?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we're basically a proactive, personalised healthcare company. And as I just said, our mission is to provide people with the tools to live a long, strong, active and healthy life. And what we try to do is we try to do this in an evidence-based way, where everything that we do begins with an assessment, then there's an intervention, then there's an assessment, and then over time we can track the progress of our clients in a range of different biomarkers, all of which contribute towards healthy living. David, next slide, please. We're definitely not scientists and we're definitely not clinicians, but what we do try and do is use the science and tech which already exists in the longevity space and basically give it a route to market and an informed way of using it with our customers so that they can progress their personal health journeys. Because the one thing we want to do, next slide please, David, is we want to use this tech to increase the health span of our members. Even if we can't increase the lifespan, which obviously isn't always possible, we do want to try and increase the health span of our customers and help them to reduce their biological age. And as we've been on this journey, we've fairly quickly realized that physical activity, nutrition, and sleep are probably three of the most important pillars of longevity. But not far behind that is the concept of metabolic health. And in talking to lots of or various different clinicians, we came to understand that if we can improve a person's metabolic health, we can definitely help improve a whole series of physical and mental challenges that a lot of people have, particularly around areas of diabetes, pre-diabetes, hypertension, obesity, fatigue, brain fog, inflammation, really just to name but a few. So the second pillar to our longevity brand is all about improving a customer's metabolic health. And in fact, one of the main things that we do with our customers is a bioage assessment. And the bioage assessment covers four key components, one of which is strength, one is cardiovascular fitness, one is mobility and flexibility, and the fourth is metabolic health. And we realized fairly soon in that it was virtually impossible to improve a person's metabolic health by physical activity alone. We needed to be mapping and integrating personalized lifestyle plans which covered physical activity and nutrition and stress and sleep if we were going to improve people's health. Next slide, please, David. So we started looking at metabolic health. Everybody's very familiar with BMI, and personally, I think BMI absolutely has a role to play, but it's definitely not the future, because BMI doesn't really go into enough detail about what's going on under the surface. So with our metabolic health programs, we look at some detail around, I think next slide, please, David. Muscle mass. Can we encourage our customers to build muscle mass over time, bearing in mind they're fighting the aging process? That's not always that easy. How much visceral fat have our customers got, which is a key health indicator, and how hydrated are they? And 99% of all the clients that we see when they begin our programs are drastically, in some cases, dehydrated, and it's quite difficult, in fact, to increase levels of hydration, certainly over short periods of time, but much easier over long periods of time. So we developed a 6-month or a 26-week metabolic health program. Next slide, please, David. And it's called 155. And the premise is really simple. So we tried to take something which is really complicated, i.e. metabolic health, and we tried to simplify it. And the basis of our 155 metabolic health program is, can we get our customers to increase their muscle mass by 1 kg? Can we get our customers to reduce their body fat by 5 kg as a minimum, these numbers are, and can we get them to a point where they're all hydrated, or their total body water is above 50%? And of course, ladies really need to be hydrated between 50 and 55, and men over 55%. We deliver this through a fairly rigorous strength training routine, personalized nutrition, and very continuous assessment. Sometimes the assessments take place 2 to 3 times a week. Okay, next slide. And the results we've had have been great. So this is really the results of 55 clients that went through the process. On average, and these are average numbers, they've dropped 6.4 kg body fat, 3.9 reduction in body, so average weight loss 6.4 kg, 3.9% body fat, 1.5 reduction in visceral fat, 4.4, that should be kg actually, increases in muscle gain, and 1.6% hydration. And really, these are evidence-based outcomes that we've achieved in a genuine community setting. And one of the things that we've learned is actually the numbers are what the numbers are, but of more importance to our clients coming through the program is the sense of community that they find in coming to longevity and to our nutrition clubs, and really achieving results together. So they're the averages. The next slide shows the averages of the top of the upper quartile. If you can flick to the next slide, David. So the upper quartile customers, they've lost on average 12.1 kilograms. In fact, the biggest weight losers, 25 kg, 6% body fat, 2.8 litres in visceral fat, 1.7 kilograms muscle mass gain, and over 3% in hydration. And critically, they've all had a metabolic age reduction on average of over 10 years. And next slide, please, David. This is really important because all the data shows, and these are just some of the statistics that I could have put on the slide, but all the data shows that a 1 litre reduction in visceral fat, in fact, lowers the incidence of CVD by 25%. 1 kilogram more muscle mass fundamentally equals better glucose control, hormone control, control of blood sugars, and the list goes on, but especially longevity. Hydration improves energy and cognitive function, and even a 5 to 10% weight reduction is the equivalent or reduces the risk of type 2 diabetes by over 58%, over 50%. And next slide, please, David. So really, we've taken a load of fitness people, we've focused them on some of the key determinants of metabolic health in order to optimize the health of our clients. And through the delivery of our 155 program, we've demonstrated how fitness clubs, non-clinicians, people like me, can deliver measurable metabolic health outcomes, which really bridges the fitness and healthcare gap and definitely contributes towards health, happiness, and longevity. Thanks very much.
Okay. Yeah, thanks very much, Neil. I'm going to add Lizzie and also Paul has now joined us. So we will welcome Paul. Thank you very much for joining us today. Would you like just to say hello so I can check your mic?
Can't hear it.
Yeah. I can hear you.
No.
I can hear you okay. Yeah, so before we move on to Lizzie's presentation and give Paul centre stage, I'd just like to share my experience of Neil's programme. Because I joined Neil's gym, well, it's over a year ago now, and I've seen my. Can you hear me okay? If you give me a thumbs up, Ollie, can you hear me okay? Yeah, you can hear me okay.
I cannot hear you.
I can hear you, Paul. You can't hear me. Oh dear. Well, apologise for the technical. Apologise for the technical problems.
Come off and come on again.
Just to reiterate that. I joined Neil's gym over a year ago, and I've seen a tremendous improvement in my bioage in that time. So I'm not sure whether I'm included in Neil's figures, but when I started, my bioage was 74, which was actually the same as my physical age. And in the time that I've spent primarily in the gym, although I have been to the nutrition club a few times, primarily in the gym, I've seen my bioage go down from 74 to 59. So I've reduced my bioage by 15 years, which has primarily been through the gym and my strength age. So I focused on strength, but at the same time, although I've not been going to the nutrition club, I do use biosensors to measure my blood glucose levels, and that's helped me to improve my diet as well. So even if you just focus on one area of one of those 4 areas that Neil's been working on, you can produce significant results. I'm now going to ask Lizzie to. I'll load your slides up, Lizzie, and if you'd like to take us through your slides, and I'll unmute you, take you through the slides. So I'll put them on full screen. Just bear with me. Okay. Lizzie.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Lizzie, Dr. Lizzie Almas. I work at the Levitas Clinic, or the Levitas Group, primarily based in London and Guildford. And essentially we're a general practice clinic initially, but we've sort of grown to sort of encompass this future of longevity and the exciting world that it is, essentially. So we try and sort of bridge that gap between modern medicine and looking at the body and its systems in a more holistic way, in the hope of ultimately trying to, you know, treat patients for the root cause rather than necessarily just the symptoms that they present with. So our general belief is ultimately that the body is obviously hugely complex and everything is interconnected. And so we try to sort of address things from the bottom up in promoting obviously wellness, well-being, and obviously longevity to the point where we can. So that's what we do in practice. Myself, maybe next slide actually, David. So I'm a medical doctor by profession, but I sort of entered the world of functional or integrative medicine a number of years ago, 5-6 years ago, when I did the certification through the Institute for Functional Medicine, and then joined the Levitas Group soon after, and I spent the last 6 years there. And I personally kind of specialize more so in fertility and menopause and bioidentical hormone therapies, gut health, energy restoration. So it's hard to sort of say what your specialty is because it all overlaps, doesn't it? So you always kind of end up addressing a little bit of everything to sort of try to realign the body to optimize its function. So that's me. Next slide. Yeah, so the Levitas, we're a group of doctors and other clinicians. We ultimately, as I said, we ultimately try and design our programs very much focused on the individual. So although we kind of have a framework to how we operate, we very much tailor or target our treatments according to the person in front of us, based on their medical history and obviously some of the testing that we typically perform early on. And we use all that to kind of guide how we proceed. The idea is really that we absolutely try and address the medical aspect of health, but we also want to recognize and remember that we're sapient beings at the same time, and our capacity for sort of high level reasoning and our self-awareness, unique to humans typically, also plays a really big role in your wellness, essentially, in how your body functions. So absolutely, we do try and optimize people's health from kind of a medical perspective, but then we also, the later parts of our programs generally try and focus on mental well-being and optimization and stimulating the vagus nerve, and things that we know from a neuroregulatory perspective are really powerful on your health markers. So yeah, we try and take it, I guess, one step further because we believe that element of the mind and how it affects the body is really important. Yeah, next slide. So this is, we've constructed this sort of 10R approach to how we typically address patients who come in. And ultimately, the remit here is that most people who come in the door are, to a certain extent, nutritionally depleted in the 21st century. Very few people have optimal levels of sort of multi-nutrients or vitamins and minerals that we test. And so we tend to dedicate the initial starting phases just to restore the body so that it feels safe, so that its functions are optimized, so that it doesn't have to act on or use reserve energy, essentially, to function. And then we move on to what we also deem to be pretty important as an initial step to ultimately remove toxins and detox the body. Because the way that we operate in the 21st century is that we operate in this relatively high state of stress. But like Neil was saying, like, we don't have great sleep, etc. We don't necessarily eat the right things. And our bodies are typically quite toxin laden and chemical exposed. So we really try to move patients through this kind of framework where we give them the nutrients needed to make the body feel safe so that we can move on to the next phase, which is the point of release, essentially. Removing bad things and detoxifying the body, working on the gut, emptying it so that we can ultimately repair, reset, renew, which basically describes the latter phases of the program. But the progression and the stages are there for a reason. Ultimately, you can't just delve straight into, a phase 6, rewiring the mind, if your body is still crying out for help. So the progress is made usually quite quickly, but it has to go through those specific phases so that you're primed, essentially, to come out the other side feeling and actively being a lot better. So that's the kind of general approach that we take, and the number of R's in the approach has increased as the sort of medicine and as the longevity space evolves, essentially, mainly because of this kind of much more focus and understanding that we are, as I said, like sapient beings, and our mind has such a big control over our body. So often we have patients who are essentially have been sick for a long time with chronic diseases such as Lyme, for example, and they are better on paper, physiologically, their blood results, etc., and their bacterial results and viral results are better. They're technically well, but they themselves don't improve. They still feel unwell. And that's where that sort of mental blueprint comes in that we need to reset and realign, right? So we have to basically reset the mind's perspective of what the body is and how it feels. And that's where those latter steps have come in over the last year or two, where it's the realign and represent, which is basically about this idea that we need to reset the brain and activate the vagus nerve to allow us to actually heal fully and genuinely feel better. So that's our sort of 10R approach to well-being. And most people will go through this structure to some extent and actually come out feeling 10 million times better than they ever did when they went in. And then that just grows over time as they start living in this new body, essentially, and mind. Final slide. So just a quick one. I think I just thought I'd mention it, as you said to David. We obviously have our conference coming up on Saturday. Maybe some of you are attending. But this is the blueprint to human optimization. And so we touch on obviously medical aspects and elements within longevity, like gut health and liver health, and some of the fundamentals to get right to ensure that you're in a good place. But then a lot of the focus has and will be with the speakers who are coming on Saturday, has oriented around this idea that mental wellness and the way that we signal through the body, our neurological kind of system and its signaling capacity with the rest of our body plays a really big role, and actually actively working on it through breathing exercises and just removing yourself a little bit from your day-to-day life and technology and the impacts that it has plays a really big role. It plays a really big role in how you feel long-term, and actually can be the sort of final switch that's needed for you to thrive rather than just be optimal. So Saturday should be great. There's lots of phenomenal speakers, and you have to let me know if some of you will be there. I'll personally be speaking about the sort of gut-brain connection and how you almost can't differentiate. You can't just focus on the gut health or just focus on brain health. it's a two-way street, essentially. So it should be really good. I'm excited. But yeah, that's me, I'd say, David.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm now going to add Paul to the stage. We could hear you, Paul. Can you say
again.
something so we can hear you?
Hey. Hello.
We can't hear you, Paul. Well,
can you hear me?
we can hear you, but
okay, now.
Is that
you can now?
Okay, now, yeah.
Okay.
It was just some sort of blip.
Okay, excellent. So Paul, would you like to take the stage now? Neil and Lizzie have done their presentations. Would you like to talk about your work? If you have some slides, you can share your screen.
Do you want me to use some slides? Yeah, okay. I will. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I'll share my screen and show those. No problem.
Okay, well, I'll give you the stage now, and if you'll share your slides, then we'll have go into a discussion, because I think there's a lot of commonality between what we've heard already, and I'm sure what we're going to hear from you. So
sure.
So the stage is yours.
Is it work? Let me share my screen. So present, share screen, share screen, share screen. Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Lee. Can you hear me well? I hope you can. Right. So I'm Professor Paul Lee. I'm a doctor, engineer, and a scientist. I have been in the regenerative space for the last 20 plus years. I'm an orthopedic surgeon by trade. I have been regenerating cartilage all my life. I've worked in a lab, I've done ground research, and also I have been applying this philosophy to human medicine. I have written many different chapters, different books, or different magazines, and regeneration is all I focus on for the last 20 years. I have written a book called Regeneration by Design, which is talking about how we can use science, physics, chemistry, biology, and appropriate timing to help us to increase our longevity, as well as how we can enhance our being. You can get this book on Amazon, and we have made it to #1 bestseller internationally in the UK, Canada, and America in Amazon. Based on that book, we have also recently published a recent textbook with Springer Medicine on musculoskeletal regenerative medicine. It is a textbook talk about how we can use different technologies such as AI, engineering principle, to help us to regenerate our body in a medical term. But all in all, in total, what we have done is that based on the regenerative science and based on the philosophy of physics, we have combined a lot of pre-existing treatment and energy into one practical way that we can deliver to people. There are, of course, multiple different ways that we chatted about earlier on in terms of gut health, mental health, metabolic health. These are all very important. So I call those the biology. But before the biology, there's chemistry and there's physics. Physics is the most important things. That's what keep the worlds go round, and actually that's what keep the world orbiting around the sun. It's all down to physics. Physics is all about energy. In order to enhance the energy, if we can actually use them appropriately, we will be able to help us to regenerate and recharge our body. Hence, we have spent the last 5 years to combine all these physics together to build and develop this regeneration pod. Within the pod, we will be able to deliver all this energy to the body based on vibration energy, heat energy, sound energy, magnetic energy, and light energy. By combining all this energy into one chamber in the very intense 20 minutes of energy recharging the body, we can actually help the body to feel better, less tired, and be ready to help us to move our chemistry and our biology. Now, so there are multiple different ways that we will try to make a very complicated system in terms of the human regeneration into actionable steps. And I think the last two speakers have also talked about there are multiple other steps as well. But from what I'm talking to you guys today is about Regen PhD Pod. Within that, there are different ways we can help our body to regenerate. And that's my talk today in terms of the inventions and in terms of my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to bring everyone back on stage again now, just to have a little bit of a discussion. First of all, just to kind of summarize what I've taken from this, and what I've heard, not just from the presenters, but also my personal experience with Neil's. I mentioned that I've been a member of Neil's gym for over a year, and I've seen for myself the results that it's produced in me, not only in terms of reducing my bio age, but also to help with just mental and physical health. I don't take any medication. I'm 76 years old, walk 5 miles every day. And so I think this holistic approach to personal health, but I think one of the challenges is, and this is what I'd welcome all of your views on, is how you actually evidence health and well-being. It's okay, we go to the doctors and we have tests and we can have we can measure our blood health, but that doesn't always match with how we feel in ourselves. So again, I'll start with Neil. How did you arrive at this idea of bioage? And the concept of aging younger, which also Lizzie mentioned, Neil.
Well, after working in the UK fitness industry for about 35 years, which is basically an evidence-free zone, we decided we wanted to do some things differently. I think the world's changed massively over the last 10 to 15 years. And there's probably, we've probably all got now more health data on our wrists or our fingers than GPs ever thought was possible, even 10 years ago. So I think using wearable technology now, there's lots of different ways that you can measure different health indices or biomarkers. They're not all 100% scientifically accurate. Some are more accurate than others. And they're certainly not all easily understandable. And I think a lot of them do need explaining by a professional, whatever your definition of a professional is. But for longevity, ours was all around the concept that, we didn't, as I said before, we don't think normal aging is normal. Normal aging is fundamentally a result of 21st century living, where we've spectacularly managed to engineer physical activity out of our normal lives. And because we've managed to engineer physical activity out of our normal lives, that's fundamentally a massive cause in terms of the way that we age. So we look at, in longevity, we look at 4 key indicators of health-related fitness. So we look at muscular strength. Sarcopenia, whether we like it or not, is one of the biggest factors which lead to frailty and infirmity in old age, particularly in people in their 70s and 80s. So we look at muscular strength and the importance of maintaining muscle mass as we age. We look at mobility and flexibility. We look at cardiovascular fitness, and VO2 or a VO2 max score is one of the single biggest indicators of longevity. And the final thing we look at is metabolic health. And with our customer, and there's loads of different metrics involved in metabolic health. So we look at body fat, we look at muscle mass, we look at hydration, we look at visceral fat, we look at basal metabolic rates, we look at phase angles, so look a bit of stuff around cellular health. And we use those metrics and we track them with our customers in week 1, week 4, week 12 and 26. So over a 6-month period, all of our members are getting 4 fairly comprehensive assessments, for want of a better word. And then between each assessment, we do some intervention, and those interventions are broadly around different types of physical activity, personalized nutrition, as I mentioned earlier, and sleep. Because if you can get those 3 things right, you're well on the path to improving your health span.
Yeah, well, I'd certainly endorse that. And these are all elements of lifestyle medicine, which is my main area of interest. Can I go to you, Lizzie, to ask you how you actually provide the evidence to show that what you're doing as a holistic approach? How do you collect the evidence to prove that it works?
I'd say it's a really good question, because there's a kind of fine line, right, between there being evidence that shows that what we do is working from a data perspective, where people have conducted, fair randomized controlled trials in a controlled setting to prove that what we're doing is correct, right? And I think everyone would probably agree that within the space that we operate, there's definitely potentially a lack of this type of evidence. But we also obviously have to act on the way that, we see thousands of patients a year, and we also have to take on board their physical response, right? And how they feel. And that in itself is also a form of evidence collection. I think, we obviously, there's certain things that in the last 10 years have become a little bit more evidence-based, right? A little bit like Neil was saying, like we know that bone density and muscle mass is a marker of longevity. We know that VO2 max is a marker of longevity. We know that visceral fat percent scores have a negative impact on your metabolic health. So, I think we obviously use the evidence that's there and that has accumulated in the last, mainly 10 years really, or more, slightly more. But I think, we also are really receptive and responsive to the way that our patients feel off the back of interventions that we believe are the right ones. If we largely focus on mitochondrial health and inflammation in the body, as we kind of see them as the two main cornerstones for kind of chronic disease, metabolic instability, etc., then we obviously try and deploy tactics that we think and believe, and there is some evidence suggesting work, and then we have to be a little bit responsive to results as well. So I think it's a bit of both, if that makes sense, David.
Mm. Well, the thing that sticks out to me is, in what both you and Neil say, is the personalisation to individuals. You look at the person in a very holistic way. You can measure certain things about them, as they do at the longevity network, and that can form the basis of your personalised treatment. So do you have anything that's specific that helps you to personalize treatment to the Levitas group?
I think I would say almost everything we do is to a certain extent personalized, right? Because we have very comprehensive and extensive consult times. And by default, that's the best information you're going to get, is the one that comes firsthand from your patient and how they respond. So that's one element that I think is undervalued, actually, the story. But from a sort of, I guess, more tech perspective, obviously we do any testing you could possibly think of, be it functional tests with saliva, urine, and then obviously we use blood, etc. And across those three mediums, we get pretty good insights into the sort of, the physiology, and we act on those. We use kind of in the moment data, as you say, like people with wearables and HRV tracking, VO2 max, continuous glucose monitors, to then allow us to kind of shape the patient kind of experience and the kind of biofeedback that we can act on a little bit more, right? So as you said yourself, we're all individual and our responses are a little bit dependent on our genetics and subsequently our epigenetics. And so we have to keep that in mind. So yeah, it's about biofeedback, including wearables, the tech that we have available, but also the patient story. And that has to evolve from appointment to appointment.
Yes. Okay. Well, you mentioned about the vagus nerve and vagus nerve stimulation. I think that provides me with a lead into Paul to ask him to give me a little bit more detail about the Regen PhD Pod that I experienced at the launch event a couple of weeks ago. I spent probably about 50 minutes in the chamber. and I found it an extraordinarily relaxing experience. I think to experience the full benefits of the treatment, you need to go over a period of time. But Paul, can you give us a sort of an insight into the personalization of the treatment? How would that work with a Regen Pod? How do you assess what a patient needs? I know you specialize in MSK. So what is your assessment, and how do you use that to personalize the treatment?
Thank you, David. And I think, it's very important for us to act and run by data. Data is the most important thing, right? So for me, when we're looking at musculoskeletal condition, movement is very, very important. How can we assess movement? How can we assess motion reliably? So we have built an artificial intelligence with a normal camera, standard RGB camera, which is this camera on your phone, that will be able to turn your assessment into a three-dimensional structure, into a computer space. And within that, we can do the analysis. And within that, we can actually do the motion age. I mean, people talk about biological age and metabolic age. Actually, we now be able to look at motion age. Do you move like a 60 years old? Do you move like a 80 years old? Do you move like a old person, right? So, or do you actually move much younger after certain treatment? So this is something that we can done very easily with a mobile phone capture or even a video capture on the laptop, just like that, for 20 seconds. So this is one of the way that we can keep monitoring how people are doing before and actually after a course of treatment. Now, earlier on with the speakers, we talk about different way we test blood. We use continuous glucose monitoring. We use activity trackers, all those sort of things. Yeah, we all can access to that relatively easily nowadays. The problem and the issue is that how we can interpret those data, and can we actually act up on those data, and can we actually make that link? To me, I think that it's very, very hard for human intelligence to link everything together. I think it's much better if you can feed it all into artificial intelligence. So therefore, these can all be interlinked. For example, if I run a genetic panels, I get back with 2,000 different genes and different up and down. I cannot remember it in my head for every single one of my patients. However, my AI can, to cross-link that with time tracking with that person. And I think personalization is extremely important. Now let's go back to the pod that I was talking about. This pod we have developed through physics. So within that, there are 5 different elements of energies. These energies are not something that I have invented. These are already there. These treatment, for example, light therapy, ultrasound therapy, electromagnetic field, all these are already there. We're just combining that into one safe space, and we can develop and deliver that to the patients. It is programmable, so therefore depends on the need of the customer or patients. Based on their assessment, then we will be able to titrate the best program for them. But ultimately, it's about using the external energy, the vibration, the sound, as well as the photonic energy, to actually try to install that into the person. And of course, as you quite rightly said, David, with time, that because you don't want to charge somebody up at one go, you don't want to change something drastically, because by doing so, you actually have a negative effect. It's much better off to slowly build things up bit by bit every day, or so you do a treatment course of 6 or 12 and slowly build it over a few months, and you will notice the difference. And from what we have done so far, with our motion capture device, with actually the motion age, they show a significant improvement of 5 years of motion age after using the pod. Now, it is something that, is just anecdotal evidence from ourselves. We haven't done a full randomized control trial on it. We have put in the ethical application with NIHR as well as with IRAS, so we will be doing that very soon. But yeah, I think it's a very exciting space right now. There are lots of people that are interested in longevity, a lot of people that is interested in wellness and actually regeneration. It is all pure science, and we knew it. We just need to connect those dots.
Yeah, I feel a little bit embarrassed, really, because you talk about motion and about the relationship, effectively emotion age. I think you use the term, which correlates, I think, Neil, with a little bit with your the test for stiffness that you have that uses a camera, and you do a series of exercises with a stick to work out what your physical, what your flexibility age is. I don't really want to go into much detail about that because when I started, I was as flexible as an 85-year-old. I don't think I'm that much better now, but I do feel well. I feel considerably healthier, and Longevity Network has made a big impact on me. Could you say a few words about how you do the stiffness test, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, we work with a fitness manufacturer called eGym. So the software that we use is not proprietary to us. And eGym have developed what they call a smart hub, and that's how we do the different assessments. And the particular one that you're talking about, which you were you're very good at, David. Let's be honest. It uses an AI camera. It takes the customer through 5 different mobility exercises, and it basically assesses mobility and flexibility around the neck, the shoulders, the lats. They've just introduced a new one, which is squats, hips, hamstrings, and it gives each customer some feedback on each one of those individual sort of mobility tests. And by doing regular mobility and flexibility exercises over a period of time, we can tell whether or not a customer's improved or not their mobility and flexibility. But Paul, it sounds really interesting what you're doing, because I think if using your machine hub, whatever it was called, apologies, you can demonstrate through applying energy that you can improve a person's mobility age. If you then link that to a series of functional exercises that people can do over time, when it comes to really simple things like falls preventions and broken hips and taking up NHS bedtime and all that sort of thing, we might end up with a really decent functional solution.
Yeah, I agree with you. There is a big problem with, fractures and, neck or femur fractures, especially on the elderly, is down to sarcopenia as well as osteoporosis, right? So if we can actually, reverse that and prevent that, there are multiple ways we can do it. Not everybody can, one of the big things that we want to ask people to do is lift weight and to, build their bone strength as well as a muscle strength. It's good, but not everybody can do that. So potentially we need to look at some other ways also. But yeah, in terms of the software that we have developed, is just need to use a standard web camera. We don't need any special equipment. Some of my patients use it at home, and we can monitor them. I initially discovered that software and build that software for after total knee and total hip replacement, to actually look at has people improve after those sort of movement. And yeah, I mean, within that, it show a big difference. Certainly, yeah, I think it's we know that movement is linked to health, because there's a sit to rise test back in the 90s. It's basically a massive paper that was written, presented, from a group from Brazil. Basically, can you stand from a sitting position and then from standing to sitting down without using your hands? And then you score that out of 10, right? And what I have got here is a digital version of that, basically. So we know that in terms of your balance, your movement, how agile you are, is really directly related to your health and your mobility and your risk of fracture. Certainly with exercise and movement and with different sort of program would definitely help on that.
Yeah, can I then go on to a slightly different topic, but in a way it's related. It's something else I've just started to try, and that is to do with the vagus nerve. I've been to more than one conference where this has been talked about, and when I went to a big exhibition and conference in London at the Design Centre recently that you know about, Neil, that one of the things there that they were exhibiting was the vagus nerve stimulator. And I managed to acquire one myself to try out. And it's difficult to actually provide evidence from the time that I've used it anyway, the length of time I've used it, difficult to find evidence, because maybe Lydia, you can explain what a vagus nerve stimulator is and what it's designed to do, and then I will just share my experience of using one of those stimulators.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so there's a few of these devices that have hit the market. Sensate Stone, Neurosem are some of the ones that most people know about. The idea, I guess, behind this is that ultimately we've technically maybe undervalued the role of the vagus nerve as a sort of highway between your brain and your gut, as a sort of lead signaling agent in your body. And what we've come to know essentially is that through stress, be it mental or physical stress, internal stress, this vagus nerve can technically, in layman's terms, turn itself off, or lose its tone would probably be a better way of saying it. And so vagal tone is ultimately what we're trying to improve when we start using these devices. Their aim is to activate and subsequently improve the tone of the nerve itself, its capacity to actually function and signal, be it carrying signals up from the gut through the enteric nervous system into the vagus nerve into your brain, and vice versa, from the brain down the vagus nerve into the enteric nervous system into your gut. And so over time, due to the way that we operate in the 21st century, again, which we've touched on before now, but we really put that nerve under pressure. It's our parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest. We spend far too long in what we call sympathetic stress zones. And consequently, we sort of lose our capacity to use that nerve. And so the device that you're talking about, its main aim is to basically reignite, activate, improve the tone of that vagus nerve so that our capacity to rest and digest and all the benefits that come from having an active vagus nerve, improved sleep, etc., improved digestion, motility, can happen.
What I found from I use a device called I think it looks a bit like Neurosym, but it's called Pulsetto.
Oh yeah,
and it has electrodes that just basically fit on your neck, and use a mobile app, and you choose what it is you're trying to address, whether it's sleep or stress or whatever, and you can set the intensity level of the signals that stimulate the vagus nerve, and it's combined with music therapy, relaxing music. I wasn't quite sure when I used it. I did find that it helped me sleep, but I wasn't sure whether that was the wonderfully relaxing music or whether it was the stimulation of the vagus nerve. But I think this brain gut health connection is extremely significant, and I had the privilege of going to a conference in London earlier this year, where some scientists from China were showing some of the results. They got people with really quite serious neurological conditions that have been helped substantially by vagus nerve stimulation, or lymph node drainage is the other action that they can take. Your stimulation in your Regen pod, Paul, how does that work? Does that have any similar sort of impact on the body?
Sure. So we are focusing on, so in terms of that element, so the bit that I focus on is the rotating electromagnetic field. So it's what we call the PIMF, which is similar. There are multiple different devices out there. For example, MBST, people probably heard of that. It's one of the one that using electromagnetic field. The I1 device is what I use for cartilage regeneration, which is basically using electromagnetic field to actually stimulate the healing and actually reduce inflammation. The electromagnetic field is quite powerful because we use MRI scan all the time to look at images, right? So you can see that the body have a big influence and big changes to electromagnetic field. Instead of using it as a diagnostic tool, we now be able to use those as treatment. So one of the energy that we use within the pod is by giving the certain frequency of the electromagnetic pulse and actually spinning around and give the cells some of the energy so that they can heal and they can recover. On top of that, there are photonic energy, which is where the red light therapy initially come from. And with the photonic energy, it does help to give the mitochondria a little bit more energy as well. These are the two main modulation. The ultrasound, we use that in physiotherapy quite often to relax some of the tendons, some of the muscle. So we build that in within the system as well. The heat within that is basically act as a catalyst just to make things go a little bit faster while you're in the pod. So that's basically is the whole philosophy within what we do within the pod. It is using physical energy and physical element around there to try to install those to push our body into the recovery phase.
Okay, we're nearing the conclusion time of the webinar. So very briefly, I just wanted to ask you for your brief comments about the government's 10-year plan, which is based on community health and well-being centres that are multidisciplinary. That include things like nutrition clubs, gymnasiums, exercise clubs, a whole range of people who normally would be outside of the medical profession, but located in the community setting to take advantage of social connections that are very important in people's health and well-being. I'll start with you, Neil, because I think your nutrition club, together with the longevity gym, they've got the kernels there of a community health and well-being centre.
Yeah, and even though those facilities that you've just mentioned have got separate locations at the moment, where the plan is to try and bring them together into a single space. I mean, I think, as with anything like this theory and practice, I think the theory, and we've demonstrated it in both facilities that I run. People join. I mean, we don't like using the word gym. People join my longevity studio largely for physiological reasons, largely because they don't want to age in the same way that their parents aged, and that's a key driver. So they join for physiological reasons, but they don't stay for that. You know, with all the assessments and interventions we do, and the fact that we love to dazzle people with science, they're not that interested. They stay for the sense of community and belonging that they get from being a member of the club. And you can see it a mile off where we've successfully integrated people into smaller community groups. Yeah, they come on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday to work out with their friends. You know, not necessarily. The thing at the forefront of their mind isn't necessarily, you know, I'm coming here to reduce my biological age. So I think the theory is absolutely sound. The skeptic in me, having worked in local authority leisure for over 30 years, basically says that those people that want to do something about their health and want to take accountability for their health will join these community hubs. And the very people who need to join the hubs won't. So it's how you can attract those people and broaden, I think, the reach and broaden the appeal to really reach areas of the population or specific demographic groups that, you know, want our help is one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Lizzie, what about your view on the idea of a kind of one-stop health and well-being, which is a hub of a community that covers that attracts people, as Neil said, not just for going to the gym, but actually as for the community purposes and sense of being part of something. What's your view?
I mean, it's absolutely fundamental. It's one of our 10 R's that I was speaking about earlier, which is this idea of reconnecting, which is something that people have become less and less good at. And we know that, you know, populations who are observed in the blue zones, these kind of zones in the world, there's a few of them, Japan and in Greece and whatnot, who seem to live a lot longer than the rest of us. One of the big things is that they operate in a community setting, right? They have a much more social calendar, call it what you want. And we know that for those people who feel like they're part of something and part of a community and have a role to play and turn up, and whether that's because of, you know, fitness, or fitness became a reason to turn up in the first place, as Neil was saying, and then they stay because it means that they can have a chat with their friends on a Monday morning. It doesn't really matter. The bottom line is that generally we know that stroke, heart disease, dementia risks fall dramatically when people feel like they're part of a community. Doesn't really matter why they joined in the first place, but it's why they stay. So ultimately, you know, from what the government are doing, it makes total sense. So let's just hope it works. It's a very powerful way to achieve results, not only for your health, but also for your sort of well-being long term, right?
And Paul, I'll finish with you, because the other issue about this sort of consolidation of a number of different services in the community, your pods are quite an expensive capital item. And I notice you also have Power Plate, which is another piece of technology designed to help people. If you have all of these facilities located in one place, it gives multiple different sources of treatment and therapies for people. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. You know, in terms of the NHS long-term plan, that's great. You know, the what is great, and the how is a tricky bit, right? And how we can achieve that. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of capital equipment is quite expensive especially with new tech, and it is important to have a community center or community hub that people can actually use those equipment. It's not something that, you know, would be fair for everybody to buy themselves and stay at home by themselves. And I think it's about the reconnection and bringing everybody together, and that would actually help longevity and actually build a better society. It is important I think it's a very, very good plan from the government in terms of what we want to do to make people to be more connected, but the devil is in the detail of the how. And certainly, yeah, with all this equipment, you definitely need it to be all in one place instead of everybody own them individually.
Okay, thank you very much, all of you, for joining me this afternoon. I've enjoyed talking about this. I think there's a lot of commonality between this concept of being able to age younger. We know it is possible. The trick is actually how we can get that message out and make it accessible to everybody, not only everybody who wants it, but everybody who needs it. So I'm just going to close now just by asking each of you just to say a sentence or so. Just any closing thoughts, Neil?
I just think from all the clients that we see, both in the Nutrition Club and the Longevity Studio, I mentioned it earlier, there's a lot of people out there who have seen the way that their parents have aged, and they don't want to age in the same way. And what we say to our clients is, you not 100% of the time, but for many people, they can take accountability by lifestyle choices that they make, which significantly affect the way that they're going to age. And I think there's loads of science out there now. There's loads of clinical research out there now, which suggests that if we simply do 4 or 5 key things on a consistent basis, we're going to improve our health span, and that's the most important thing. Thank you,
Neil. Lizzie?
Yeah, I think it's consistency to your approach is obviously the key, right? And that's what people struggle with. But I think, we can get kind of lost in the kind of tech aspect and all the new things that come to market and the supplements and whatnot that are available to us now. But I think what's so important is just the foundations and the fundamentals to health, right? Almost taking it back to us as being mammals, sapiens. And as Neil said, you've got to start with your diet and your lifestyle and your movement and your sleep. Like, try and get those three things in order, and the rest can come subsequently. And I think it's easy to neglect that and think there's a magic answer. But put in some of the hard work, and then the rest can come next.
Yeah, I think healthy habits, if you can get into the healthy habits and knock off the unhealthy habits, and I'm all too familiar with the triggers that lead to these unhealthy habits. Like, every time I used to go into a garage, I had to buy a bar of chocolate, and it became almost an addiction. This was the two things. So I've replaced some of those unhealthy habits by putting little triggers in the house, like having a glass of water on the kitchen surface that tells me when I come back from Neil's gym, just have a pint of water. And these are little triggers just to help develop these healthy habits. Paul, just final word from you, please.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely beautiful. Summarize it up. So the bit that I want to talk about is live forever, right? So live forever is a philosophy. It's about what you have learned and you pass it on to your next generation. Because, nobody can live forever, but actually it is the philosophy of how we can maintain our habit. What is good, that is what we can pass on to the next generation, and we can actually reduce aging and make human being as a species live forever. And that's what I will be talking about.
Okay, thanks very much, all of you. And just to remind people also that there is this event at the Royal Society of Medicine on Saturday. I think it's well worth going to. Levitas Group are going to be there. I'm not publicising Levitas or any of you individuals. It's just a pleasure to listen to your expertise and your experience. So you can, Lizzie, how will people find out about this event? Just Google Levitas Group, will they find it?
Yeah, it's called Growing Younger, and then you'd put Levitas and it should definitely come up on Google. But yes, Growing Younger, Levitas.
Okay, well, I plan to be there myself on Saturday, and
I'll see you there.
Yeah, great, see you there. So thank you very much, guys. I'm now going to close the session.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks, David.
All the best.